Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have a very interesting episode, I think, today. But first, I want to say hi to my sister Jamie. How's it going?
Going well, going well. Thank you. Interesting topic today for sure.
Yeah. In fact, this is something that's pretty simple, but very overlooked in the realm of ultra processed food use disorder, and that is fiber. Hopefully, you will all geek out on this like I did when uncovering there's several layers involved in fiber that at first glance people just don't realize. But I think you're going to find this fascinating, like I did. And so, what we're going to hit on today is why fiber is a game changer for those recovering from ultra processed foods. We're going to talk about the gut brain connection and how fiber influences cravings, satiety, and even our mood. That is one that you may not expect. And also how fiber regulates blood sugar, helps dopamine balance, and supports natural appetite control. In fact, when I was surfing around about this episode and gathering some data, I came across a quote from Dr. Robert Lustig. Many of you are probably familiar with him. And he says that he described fiber as half, half of the solution to the obesity epidemic. I thought that was huge. Very, very big deal. So that is why we are going to talk about it today.
Excellent. So one of the things that, again, with Dr. Lustig, it's interesting. I actually have a different view on fiber than I used to have. So we'll get into more of that. But I guess my question is, those of you listening, do you track your fiber intake? And have
Mhm.
you noticed a difference when you eat more fiber? Paige, do you track?
I don't like officially with a pen and paper. I used to track like when in my early dieting years, there would be scraps of paper everywhere with columns and of numbers and things like that. And I was just like in this rigid panic state of just writing down, okay, I think I sniffed something. Should I do a half a calorie for that? But I refuse to ever go back to tracking because it's just such a mind thing for me. It's dangerous for me mentally. So I know that I kind of have an idea where I am. I know I'm adding flax, chia seeds, basil seeds. Basil seeds, by the way, are my new discovery. I figured it out through Casey Means, and they are really good. Um, but I eat my pound of raw salad with fruit and nuts in it, so there's more fiber. I have oats and other vegetables throughout the day. So I don't have an exact number, but I know I'm leaning into these fiber-rich foods all throughout my day and in all my meals. So I don't even know how I could get more in that I'm getting in. I was a vegan for a year and lived pretty much on the vegetables then. And I even put carrots in my oatmeal, which I love, and don't knock it till you try it. So that's my sweetener in my oatmeal. But I know my digestive system is a lot happier with the more vegetables I eat. It seems to work more appropriately. And I'm always bulking up my meals with extra vegetables everywhere I can. I just try to throw things in. So let's go ahead and start to break things down when it comes to fiber, and let's talk about what fiber actually is, because that that's why we're going to talk about why we should care about it. And I've hyped it up so much, I want to make sure that we do it justice. So to start with, defining fiber is it's just a carbohydrate. It's a type of carbohydrate that your body doesn't fully break down and digest, which is a good thing because I like to have that visual of that sweeping broom just going, all the way through the intestines from beginning to end, and it's just cleaning things out along the digestive tract as you go along. Do you want to add to that? You want to break it down even further?
Yeah, again, my experience with fiber is very different now. After spending, you know, probably well over a dozen years, eating fiber very intentionally and maxing out my fiber intake intentionally and along what, Dr. Lustig shares, it is important. I think it does help with satiety. It does help with fullness, creating fullness. And certainly, there's a lot of research around plant fiber being very important, particularly for satiety and for nutrient density. Um, when I became sick last year with my autoimmune condition, for me, I started reacting very, very poorly to plant fiber and to
Mm-hmm.
fiber rich diet that I was eating before. It gave me a lot of issues in my body. For me, once that autoimmune switch flipped, and this is true for a lot of people with autoimmune conditions, once that switch flips, the plant foods, the fibrous foods that we really, I think for me, they were the cornerstone of my diet. They actually became very harmful to me. Uh,
Mm.
and again, this is my experience. This is not everyone's experience, but I think it's important to talk about, because I don't the times that I do eat fiber, I actually don't feel as good as when I limit the fiber intake, which is a shock to me. I assure you, it's a shock to me. But it seems to be related to the autoimmune condition in my body. When you cross over, and anyone crosses over into that autoimmune sensitivity arena, um, your body can see things that normally never saw before as a threat. And when our
Ah.
bodies see things as a threat, it can literally start attacking itself, trying to mitigate the threat. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, attacking when my body attacks me, different things, symptoms I have will be joint related, will be brain fog related. It could be mood related. It could be muscle related, um, and certainly fatigue related. All of those things for me are telling me that, fiber, especially fiber from whole fruits and vegetables and whole grains, that again, were the cornerstone of my diet for years, just do not work for me. And when I try to reintroduce them in very small quantities, I will get very sick. So
Is
again, it's different for everyone,
mm-hmm.
but that's, was a big surprise about my autoimmune.
Do you think, I know you're working with a lot of experts and you have a team of people around you, which I think this is so fascinating. And I'm glad you're bringing this up because you're right, everybody is different. But in general, is that the goal for you to ultimately, is that a sign of healing that you can have the fiber without that type of reaction?
I don't know. I have not
Yeah.
found, for me, I've not found that it's a requirement for me to have it at this point.
Oh, interesting.
Because every time I try to bring it back in, it really does a number on my body, and not just digestion, right? Digestion, certainly I'll get a lot of irritable bowel type of
Oh,
symptoms,
interesting.
or inflammation in my bowel from certain types of fiber. So I
Mhm.
have to just be mindful, just like with ultra processed junk, right? If I choose to eat those foods, I know I'm going to feel, hungover and not like myself. The same thing goes for fiber, where I could have digestive issues. I could have certainly gas and bloating. And then also for me, it's more relatable it's more defined relating to my joints. Um,
Hmm,
Joint issues,
interesting.
fatigue, brain fog. Um, those are all the way that fiber shows up. Plant fiber shows up specifically for me lately.
Hmm,
Again, and this was, after years of eating it and consuming it in very large quantities and never having an issue.
yeah.
Once that switch is flipped for me, it's not going back. And I did work with a dietitian for a short period of time earlier this year, trying to reintroduce some of those foods, and it just sent me right back into my autoimmune response.
Mhm. Yeah.
So again, I just want to, the caveat on this episode is, if fiber works for you, amazing. And if
Right.
you're noticing that fiber no longer provides the same benefits without the costs, right? For me, sure, I get great, benefits in my digestion, but the costs are very high.
Yeah.
The costs are very high. So again, just things to think about, right? Where's that cost benefit analysis for you?
Mhm.
And I don't think that fiber is I think nutrients are the most important point of this discussion. And
Mhm.
if you can get your nutrients in a more nutrient dense source, um, do that, right? And if you're loading up on fiber trying to get your nutrients, make sure that you're getting nutrients in from all ways, so that you don't have to overload your body with fiber trying to get your nutrients. I think that's the important distinction here. There are two types of fiber, and there's soluble and insoluble fiber. So soluble is, is really, again, slows digestion, becomes gel-like, increases satiety. It's found in soluble fibers found in oats, flax seeds, chia seeds, beans, fruits. Insoluble fiber is bulk, right? That provides bulk to stools to prevent constipation and supports detoxification. Insoluble fiber can be found in vegetables, whole grains, and nuts. And again, the recommendation from most medical professionals is to get a mix of both. Again, listen to your body, right? If you have a known autoimmune condition, some of you may not be able to do some of this mix. We do know that nuts are extremely inflammatory too for some people. So it's important just to listen to your body. Paige has a very good experience with these foods. And for many years I did too. What I noticed when my autoimmune condition was beginning, the foods like nuts and seeds that I handled like a champ, never thought twice about, started to bother me, started to inflame me, started to make, everything hurt. So just be mindful of how you notice these foods interacting with your body. The same goes for oats, right? Oats were a staple of my diet for years and years, my breakfast. And oats and egg whites, or oats and some kind of egg dish. Or I would make eggs with my oats, right? And combine them into some kind of casserole. And I noticed that no matter what kind of oat I ate, whether it was the whole unprocessed or the organic or the gluten-free, it didn't matter. My body just ached after I ate oats. So that started probably about 4 years ago. So again, just be mindful of how these foods interact with us.
And we know that the ultra processed foods in our diets are a big culprit of stripping fiber from our diet. And then it just leaves us with those blood sugar spikes and crashes and hunger and craving. So that's the opposite of having a fiber rich diet. If people are focusing on the ultra processed foods, then that's one of the good benefits of fiber, is stabilizing the blood sugar. So
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Here's where the sciencey stuff starts coming in. And of course, I love the geeky stuff. So hang with me here, because I think that you will find this fascinating too. But there is a strong connection between fiber and gut health, which is no surprise to anybody. But that is key when we are on a recovery from this ultra processed food use disorder. So we're going to talk about the gut microbiome next. And to make sure that we all understand what that is and have kind of a baseline picture of what the term gut microbiome is, a simple way to think of this is to picture this tiny ecosystem inside your gut. It's made up of trillions of bacteria and other microbes. These microbes act like a team of workers that help digest foods, make vitamins, and even produce brain chemicals that affect mood and cravings. Our bodies were designed to consume fiber. In a perfect world where our bodies are healthy and doing what they're supposed to do, fiber is a key component to that digestive system. And when good bacteria are thriving, they keep digestion smooth, they reduce the cravings for junk, and help you feel happier and more energized. But if those bad bacteria take over, often due to the ultra processed food or stress or antibiotics, they can cause the bloating, cravings, brain fog, and even mood swings. So hopefully this paints a clear picture for you. And we're going to start by talking now a little bit more about how your gut microbiome thrives on fiber, especially the prebiotic fibers found in foods like flax seeds, oats, apples, and leafy greens. Those foods fuel that beneficial bacteria that produce short chain fatty acids, which that is something I want you to remember, because we're going to talk about that in a minute. It's going to be very important to the big point that we're going to make about fiber today. And those short chain fatty acids help in regulating digestion, reducing inflammation, and even supporting brain health. So the big news is that a balanced gut microbiome can reduce cravings for ultra processed foods by stabilizing the blood sugar, like we just mentioned, and producing these neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. And the best news is that because fiber slows down digestion and stabilizes the blood sugar, then in turn it helps to reduce that urge to reach for quick fixes, which I am very guilty of. So, to make this even more intriguing, you may have heard that your gut is often called the second brain because it produces many of the same neurotransmitters as the brain. I think that's so fascinating. In fact, about 90 to 95% of serotonin and a significant portion of dopamine are actually produced in the gut.
Yeah. So again, when we think about serotonin, we know it regulates mood, and low serotonin is linked to depression, anxiety, and increased cravings. And dopamine is related to motivation, pleasure, reward, and an imbalance can lead to addictive behaviors and compulsive eating. But again, one of the things that is really important to understand about the second brain, right, our gut, is that there are nutrients found in some of these plants and fibers that Paige is talking about, nutrients found in, and again, I can't believe that I'm on this side of the fence, but here I live, is
It's a good discussion. It makes for
yeah,
a better discussion.
it's found in animal products, right? And particularly uh red meat and certain organ meats, and of course seafood, sustainably sourced and wild caught seafood. These foods are rich in nutrients like magnesium and zinc and copper and selenium. And these nutrients, and particularly these minerals, help to regulate the production of serotonin and dopamine. So again, when we talk about fiber, the real story of fiber is nutrients. Fiber helps us get the nutrients we need to make these and produce
Mhm,
these required you know, components like serotonin and dopamine for our brain.
mhm,
The other thing that Paige talked about, prebiotics and probiotics, right? So when we think about, for me now, I can tolerate the kinds of fiber that I can tolerate is fermented. So I will eat fermented foods. I will eat kimchi and sauerkraut and some olives, and in small quantities. I will eat a small quantity of those things with my fatty cuts of meat, um,
mhm,
or fats, um, along with, right, to make sure that I'm getting some plant fiber, but it's the fermented version of those plant
mhm,
fibers that work very well for me and my digestion. Make all the difference. Kefir, right? Uh, that probiotic, sort of yogurty drink. I'll have
mhm,
that in the morning. That's a very important way, that prebiotic and probiotics, to focus on those, right? So I think that when I think about the benefits of fiber, I really think about it being the prebiotic and probiotic, and it doesn't just come from plant foods.
mhm,
Um, it can come from some dairy, smart, smart dairy, but it can also come from fermented versions of those foods.
mhm.
So it's good.
Yeah.
It's important to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we leave this topic of gut health, I want to bring up one more connection. So, as we were talking about the short chain fatty acids, when gut bacteria ferments fiber, it produces these short chain fatty acids. And what's fascinating about that is the short chain fatty acids strengthen the gut lining. If you don't remember anything from today, that is the big one. And because why that's so important is it helps in preventing inflammation that could disrupt neurotransmitter production, the dopamine and the serotonin, which is what we depend on to signal the brain to regulate mood and cravings. We know that the vagus nerve connects the gut to the brain. It allows signals from gut bacteria to influence brain chemistry. Basically, when the microbiome is balanced, it sends positive signals which reduces stress and cravings. But if it's imbalanced due to ultra processed food, stress, or antibiotics, it can really trigger anxiety, depression, and food seeking behaviors.
Mhm. Yeah. And again, bottom line, if bacteria are out of balance, inflammation can damage the gut lining, right? This is what, we're referred to as leaky gut. and causes immune activation that reduces serotonin and dopamine production. And again, this is part of what I experienced at the very end of my vegan journey,
Mm,
um, where all of these things that kept me in balance all of a sudden took me way out of balance.
yeah.
So again, you need to be mindful and listen to what your body's telling you.
Mhm.
But if you have an imbalanced gut, it certainly can increase cravings for ultra processed foods, but it can also, artificially, when we look for those or consume those ultra processed foods, we're trying to increase dopamine. But again, if we have leaky gut, this permeability happens, right? So these microorganisms and all of these very, very tiny particles, this they really begin to permeate our gut lining, so it allows this
Mhm.
harmful substances to enter the bloodstream. And if you think about it, you're eating ultra processed foods, that's chemicals and additives and preservatives and metals and toxins that are literally leaking into your bloodstream.
Mhm.
And this of course can generate chronic inflammation, which again is a root cause of many issues we face today as a society. So the loss of this gut barrier, uh, definitely contributes to inflammatory bowel disease, obesity, metabolic disorders. And again, another point we want to make about is supporting this fiber-rich diet is one way to mitigate that. And again, if we think about um, slowing the digestive process, one of the ways to do that, if you're eating a lot of fiber, is to chew it thoroughly, to chew it
Mhm.
into, Dr. Michael Clapper talks about chewing your food to a cream. I don't know about you, but I've never met anyone that can do that. Um, so for me, I, again, naturally gravitated towards foods that automatically break down into a cream in my system so
Mhm.
that they move through the system and get absorbed by my small and large intestines very thoroughly. So there's not a lot of bulk that comes through for me and for most people that eat the way that I eat. So example, the reason we want to do this, we want to slow digestion is because it triggers the GLP-1 hormones. By the way, those are produced naturally in our bodies. We don't need to supplement them with things like Manjaro or Ozempic because they are produced naturally and they can be increased naturally. And this helps break the cycle, right? Having the slow digestion breaks the cycle of compulsive eating because we always think we're hungry, but if we slow our digestion, we're actually not hungry.
Mhm.
And we think about um, increasing the space of food in our system, right? So you want to have more volume in your food is one way to do that. Versus a handful of M&Ms versus a bag of apples, right? It's probably the same calories,
Right.
but it's going to be filling you a lot more with the bag of apples. Again,
Mhm.
being mindful of how those foods react, right? For some people, myself included, eating a bag of apples would be as harmful to me as eating a handful of M&Ms.
Oh,
And that again, that was not always the way that my body was wired, but post autoimmune, that is what I deal with.
I'm so fascinated to continue to watch your journey because I don't believe it's over yet. So I'm curious to watch it full circle
Yeah.
and see where you actually end up, when everything's healed and calmed down. Anyway, I want to make one more point about the short chain fatty acids because they're so important. I want to have you visualize this picture this way in your mind of when we mentioned when you eat fiber, your good gut bacteria turns into these short chain fatty acids. But we're going to rename them as arm protected security guards or soldiers that, there's that one movie where Jack Nicholas says, arm yourself and stand a post, and they're protecting the wall. So if you picture these armed security guards protecting the gut wall from the enemy, these warriors are at work 24/7, 365 because their job is to keep that gut lining strong and healthy. And if there aren't enough soldiers available, that's when those tiny little holes can form in the gut wall, or like Jamie talked about, leaky gut, which then allows these unwanted invaders, or AKA the enemy, to sneak into the body, which the problem is that's how we can get sick. But when these soldiers are strong and plentiful, they can keep the bad stuff out, like Jamie said, and keep the good stuff in, and everybody's safe. So I just
Mhm.
thought that was fascinating to think about it in that way. And really, what everybody wants to probably just talk about is, how does fiber actually help people recover from ultra processed food use disorder? And this is where it gets really cool. I think we have proven that fiber isn't just about digestion, it actually influences brain chemistry and appetite regulation. So let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I know we went fast and we got into a lot of details here. So just to reiterate and keep it simple, fiber helps control blood sugar. It enhances neurotransmitter production. It feeds gut bacteria. It increases GLP-1s naturally and helps support emotional eating. Again, and I, if you talked to me a year and a half ago, I would say I agree with all of this, and there's no other way. I don't feel that way today. Fiber can do, yes, can do all those things I just talked about, and so can a very smart and strategically approached animal product, and particularly high fat, moderate protein diet.
Mhm.
So again, and this is more of that ketogenic way of eating. Again, I never thought I'd be on this camp, but here I am. And I would say that for me, having high fat, moderate protein, and very low carb. So, and my carbs come from fermented vegetables, um, those and fermented dairy. Uh, that way of eating does all those things for me as well. It controls my hunger beautifully. I don't even think about food. I could care less. It controls my blood sugar, very stable all the time. I have I have much fewer higher highs and lower lows. I'm sort of more in the middle. And I don't really have any issues with gut bacteria or bloating or gas or any of the other things, or irritable bowel or inflammation of my bowel anymore. So again, it's very interesting. I believe that if you are low fat, moderate protein, that you have to be high fiber. You just have to, because otherwise your body cannot absorb. Think about fat soluble nutrients. Your body can't absorb them because you don't have a lot of fat.
Mhm.
But if you go to the, flip to the other side and say, okay, I'd like to go higher fat, moderate protein still, right? Because there's no need to overeat protein. And then, go on the very low carbohydrate side, because those plant foods might be irritating you for one reason or another. There's ways to get all of those nutrients that you need and have the same outcome without overloading on fiber. I believe if you're eating a very high fat, moderate protein, and very high carbohydrate diet, even in the form of plant fiber, you're not going to be as healthful, right? Because you're giving your body too much. So again, Paige, this is a good balance to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
and we're certainly not saying that we know, we agree that there's more than one way to skin a cat. We were just focusing on fiber
yeah,
today
yeah.
for people that need that. So, yeah, it's a lot to remember and understand, and it's a lot of knowledge to know, which is why we're talking about it. And hopefully it brings clarity to everybody. So just remember, fiber is essential to good health for people that aren't fighting these extra conditions. It can be a great way to keep us safe, especially in our gut lining. That is huge for me. So now that we know that fiber is a superpower in recovery, how do we actually get enough of it? Because let's be real, most people that just with a regular digestive system are not eating nearly enough. And even Jamie's way of eating right now, they probably aren't doing that to perfection either. So
Mhm.
let's talk about uh,
So
how
really,
much we need.
the goal for men and women is 50 grams per day is the ultimate goal. Again, if your body can tolerate that. And if you can tolerate chia and flax seeds in a smoothie, adding in, lentils or quinoa instead of white rice, snacking on fruit or nuts, or again, whole foods, right? Whole single ingredient foods. adding legumes to soups or salads, or, if you can tolerate grain bowls, pick, they say eating from the rainbow. Again, these are all, if your body feels amazing doing this, absolutely, this is a way to make sure that you're expanding your repertoire of foods, that fiber rich foods that you're eating.
Mhm.
And because you're eating a lot of fiber, you need to drink a lot of water. There's
Oh,
just,
yeah.
there's no way around that. Um, and on the flip side, if you're eating higher fat and not a lot of fiber, you can just drink to thirst. You don't need to worry about pounding a gallon of water or a gallon and a half of water a day, because you don't need to move through your system the way you used to with
Mhm.
fiber. So, keep in mind, hydration matters. And if you are eating a lot of fiber, you need to drink a lot of water.
Yeah. Yeah, that can turn real ugly real fast.
Mhm.
I know from personal experience, I've got to make sure that my water stays high. And something to keep in mind too, that do not go do this in one day. And I like the points that Jamie made about listen to your body, because if you go at it slowly and start making these gradual swaps, you have the opportunity to see how you feel before you dive headfirst into the deep end and you are just in a real mess with the gas and the bloating, and that is just so uncomfortable because it can almost feel like it's up under your rib cage, the pressure. So
Mhm.
I always find that there are certain foods, no matter how much I eat of them, that I always get a reaction, like the broccoli, sweet potatoes, and beans. But the main point is we just don't want anybody go from 0 to 50 overnight. That would be the opposite of a good idea. So, slow is the way to go. And if you just take one thing away from today's episode, let it be that fiber is a secret weapon on the recovery path from ultra processed food use disorder. So, the people we're talking to are the ones that are struggling with ultra processed foods. So, that's why the topic of fiber, they're probably not eating like Jamie's eating right now anyway. So we're
Mhm.
talking to the people that are struggling with their diet. So this is a good place to start experimenting and see if it gives you all the benefits that we talked about. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's the big point.
I agree. One more powerful thing. Remember, we mentioned that fiber is like the broomstick in your intestines. So if you listened to our podcast or on plastics, this is important. So if you haven't listened to our podcast on plastics, go check it out. But fiber really does do a lot to help detoxify heavy metals,
Yeah.
pesticides, plastics, endocrine disruptors, and air pollutants by binding them in the gut and preventing reabsorption into the bloodstream. Right. So again, that leaky gut process. With all the toxins in the modern industrial world, we absolutely want to set ourselves up to get all of that out, right, out of us as much as possible. This might be, one of the big arguments for increasing fiber. Again, this is a great point, and there are ways to do that. There are other ways to do that as well. So I think now we've got some time for audience Q&A.
Yeah.
The first one is, we talked about fiber being great for gut health, but how long does it take to notice improvements? I know I've done a lot of damage from all the ultra processed foods I've eaten in my lifetime. Will my digestion and cravings change overnight, or does it take weeks? No, it won't change overnight. It didn't take you, a day or two to get to where you are, and it didn't for me either. So it's going to take time. Be patient, and
Yeah.
and if fiber works for you, fruit and vegetable fiber works for you, keep experimenting with which ones you choose that make you feel your best or most energized, and which ones you notice that you maybe feel a little foggy or a little fatigued after. And it might
Mhm.
change over time. It might change through the course of your hormone cycle every month if you're a woman. So keep in mind that these things need to be monitored and looked at carefully, and be open to changing, course correcting as you go.
Maybe that's the biggest point, is that yes, what we're saying is true, but also you just need to listen. And if that doesn't work for you, then let's try this other thing. But monitoring is the big key. And you know what? I still make edits.
Yes.
today. I've been off sugar for 4 years. I'm still constantly making edits, just trying to look, for the best way that my body responds to. And you and I have talked about this a lot too. As we age, and especially as women, our needs changed. What might work one day may not work the same the next. So it's just, I think we're constantly evolving, don't you
Well
think?
said. Yeah.
Better.
Yes.
Okay, next question. Are fiber supplements a good option if I'm struggling to get enough fiber from food? Yes and no is my answer. They can help if someone is really truly struggling to get enough fiber from food, but they should be used wisely. Whole foods are always the best source because they provide fiber along with vitamins and minerals that Jamie was talking about earlier that's so important, that support gut health in ways that supplements can't. So psyllium husk or Metamucil may be the best choice because it's mostly soluble fiber and it mimics that natural fibers effects and supports gut bacteria. It forms that gel that softens stools and feeds the gut bacteria. So it helps with both constipation and diarrhea. So just make sure to look for any artificial sweeteners in anything you choose because they can really be
Yes.
sneaky about getting those in there.
And that is a universal truth. It doesn't matter if you're eating fiber or not. There's no, or if you're eating more plants and single ingredient foods, across the spectrum or a rainbow. And, or in my case, where you're eating, more animal products and, fermented vegetables. Um, it's important to remember that there truly is, um, no place for artificial sweeteners.
Right.
They just, the harm that they cause in our system, not to mention, I don't care if anyone says that they don't increase blood sugar. Unless you're wearing a CGM and you actually can say that they don't increase blood sugar, then it's, and I know very few people that can say that, right? Because if they're
And
wearing,
and there's a cascade of effects too. The brain
that's my
thinks that
point.
it's
Even
getting
if it's
ready.
not increasing blood sugar, everything else is thrown away.
Yeah,
It's
it ain't good.
So there's nothing good that comes from artificial sweeteners, not to mention even the gut stuff aside, the cravings that it causes.
Right.
It just isn't,
Right.
it's not worth it. And there's all kinds, I know aspartame is not really a thing anymore, but finally they're coming out with real good peer reviewed research that aspartame truly is poisonous. So, and that was something that people lived off of in the 80s, right?
Oh, yes. Do you remember Tab? My parents would sneak
Yes,
Tab and they said, you kids aren't supposed to drink any of this. This is
yes,
for us. And when nobody's in the room, I'd sneak a drink.
of course.
And that just burned all the way down.
Yeah, I remember. So, is there such a thing? The next question, is there such a thing as too much fiber? I'm probably the wrong person to ask this question of today. I would say yes. There is such a thing as too much fiber. Um, and again, you have to listen to your body.
Mhm.
There might be too much fiber for you at one point in your life and not enough at another. And what happens if you overdo it? You better drink your water. Drink your water and get some healthy fats in there so that you can move the mail, because otherwise there, we all know what can happen. And truly, my and I was in the fiber camp. I was, the fiber cheerleader for years. And I really can't believe that I'm on the other side of the fence today, but I am. And I think that there's some argument to be made that if our bodies were truly meant to eat all this fiber, would we have to drink a gallon of water every day to move it through? If we were truly meant to do that, would we have to do all these extreme things? I don't know. For me at this stage of my healing, it seems like I don't need the quantity that I was eating.
Mhm.
But my body was trying to get the nutrients it needed.
Mhm.
And in that, and trying to do that, I caused a whole bunch of other downstream effects.
Yeah.
So again, just listen to your body. Don't make the mistake that I did and assume that just the way that you eat today is going to be the way you eat the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right. And that's true
Yeah.
for me today. It's true for me last year. It's true for me, 15 years ago.
Right. That's a great point. That
Don't
may
rest on your
change.
laurels. Exactly.
Yeah. As you continue to heal, that may continue to change. And again, the audience we're speaking to is people that are struggling with ultra processed food use disorder. So this is a good place for someone to start that needs a place to start if they're looking
Yes.
for that.
Yes, yes. I remember when I was mitigating my ultra processed foods at the beginning of recovery, I would throw in a huge handful of broccoli or put a excuse me, a calorie dense or processed food dense item on top of a big salad, and it would help
Right.
mitigate those calories and mitigate those
Exactly.
chemicals. Absolutely a good place to start if your
Yeah.
system can handle it.
Yeah. And this is probably where I would uh, have anyone start that's trying to get off ultra processed foods. Start with this. It's the basics. See if that works, and then we'll make edits from there. The next one is, do I really need to count fiber grams every day, or is there an easier way to know if I'm getting enough? So that's a great question. And one way to monitor is by having regular, well-formed stools. That can be a direct reflection of fiber and water, and also just feeling satisfied after meals. If you can go 3 or 4 hours without extreme hunger or blood sugar crashes, which leads to consistent energy levels, then you're on the right track. If not, then we can make edits, and you can ask yourself if you're eating a couple servings of fruits and vegetables a day, whole grains or seeds, and if you have minimal constipation and bloating. That's one way.
Mm-hmm. Yep, love it. So again, when we think about the last question, does fiber help with emotional eating, or is it more about mindset and habits? So fiber, yes, it can certainly help with emotional eating. For me, I found that because I was missing nutrients from my food, and many ultra processed, people who use ultra processed foods, they are missing nutrients, right? It's just there's no way around it. So I was
Right.
eating for the nutrients. I was eating constantly, not because I was truly hungry, but because my body was still looking for the nutrients.
Yeah.
So it might have looked like emotional eating. Um, but it was my body seeking what it needed, right? It needed those vitamins and minerals and it wasn't getting them. So it was just constantly sending me back to food. And of course, I was choosing the most ultra palatable foods that there were in the home, right? So again, and I did that as a, whole food plant-based eater as well. I did that where I would seek, my body would send me, to the cooked potatoes, or it would send me to the cooked rices, or it would send me to a banana, or it was still sending me emotionally to the most caloric dense foods,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't getting, I don't think, what it truly needed.
Yeah.
Um, and again, my experience has changed and yours might too. So just something to think about.
Huge point. I mean, that's a perfect way to put on, end on, with, we're looking for the nutrients. And your body's going to still be seeking and tapping you on the shoulder to eat more if your body's not getting what it needs. So perfect goes back to, we're going to continue to make edits till we get it to where nobody's tapping you on the shoulder
That's right.
anymore. So great, great episode. Thanks, Jamie. And if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And we hope to see you next time. Bye, guys. See you
Take
later.
care.